Mr. Mitchell, anything you'd like to say?
I have really not shown much emotion for 2 years. And today, family coming up, that hurts. That hurt me. And I take responsibility for what I did. When CB Misback was my defender from day one, I told him, I take responsibility. Whatever the court sees fit, I will live or die by. But my motion today is for the family, and I'm glad I said something before it all came down. And I just want to repeat, if this helps the family at all, then I'm sorry.
Sir. Well, I agree with Mr. Fallick in that I did not get much sleep last night because this case is very unusual. None of us have seen a case like this, nor I think do we expect to see another one like this. And it's very difficult for a sentencing judge to look at a case that's really one that nobody else has ever sentenced before with these circumstances and knowing what the jury found. So in this case, the jury did find several aggravating factors, including the emotional harm to the families, which I thank the victims for speaking, or the one that spoke on behalf of the victims today. I cannot imagine what it would have been like to get a phone call that my loved one who had donated their body thinking that their last wish was being fulfilled to help somebody else who was going to have medical struggles or had the same things. In fact, I have people in my life who this is their wish. They want to be donated to science because they feel like doctors could learn from them. And then these families received a phone call that absolutely did not happen. And instead, the precious bodies of their loved ones that had been knit together at one point and were perfect people, those parts were now scattered in the forest of the Prescott area. I can't imagine what that is. So I give such consideration to the emotional harm because I have empathy, and I'm very sorry that this happened. Of course, the jury also found the value of the property taken. This is valuable, certainly to the medical industry, more so to the families. And then, of course, there was a financial number attached to these parts. The age of some of the victims was also found to be an aggravating factor. The jury also found that the first 24 counts did occur on a separate occasion than the second counts 25 through 29. And then I previously found at the end of your trial that you had one non-historical prior felony conviction. So therefore, you must be sentenced as a Category 1 repetitive offender, or a Category 1 offender on counts 1 through 24. And then for 25 through 29, as the state has explained, because those were separate occasion, that could be Category 2. Mitigation here, I agree with Mr. Fallick. You certainly expressed remorse and expressed on the stand that you wish this was not the course of action that you would have taken because of the victims' families finding out and the harm that they certainly experienced. The nature and circumstances of this case are very unique. Even the COVID 2020 time set aside, Mr. Mitchell's been very clear from the beginning that he was trying to bring attention to the bad practices of the body donation industry. And I think that Agent Johnson supported that in his testimony, that this industry does have concerning practices. This was not the way to bring that to light, because you harmed all of these families in the process. But I understand the nature and circumstances, so I will find that as a mitigator. And you have expressed remorse and you have cooperated. When I looked at the amount of time that the state was requesting, I have to say it did take me by surprise, only because I sentence people who literally kill other people, and sometimes they don't get that amount of time. And these loved ones, these wonderful humans, had already passed in some natural way or fighting a disease, and it was their last wish that was taken, which is very valuable. I'm not discounting that, but it's really hard to weigh all this out and do what's appropriate, knowing people who kill people don't necessarily get 20 years in prison. And I'm not holding, Mr. little note here to put on the record, I'm not holding your right to exercise your jury trial against you in any way. I don't think that that is appropriate, and I think everyone has a right to a trial. So all I can do is do what I think is best, and that is, I pray about it, I think about it, and I put a lot of myself into deciding these types of cases, and that's what I've done here. I do think the most appropriate way to view this is to look at counts 1 through 24 as like a spree, a crime spree. And so I'm going to consider the mitigators in that I'm going to run 1 through 24 concurrent to one another, but I'm going to give an aggravated sentence. So each count 1 through 24 will be 2.5 years. But those 1 through 24, excuse me, will run concurrent to one another. 25 to 29 would be a separate spree, a separate occasion as a category 2, also aggravated 3.75 years on each count, those to run concurrently to one another, but consecutive to 1 through 24 for a total amount in prison of 6.25 years. The credit to be credited to the defendant is 671 days of pre-sentence incarceration credit. Defendant is eligible for community supervision. Defendant shall pay restitution. Restitution will remain open to the victim should there be any restitution requests. You will receive notice of that. If you want more information, we can set a hearing. You can request a hearing from the court. Otherwise, an order will be entered for you to pay any restitution. Restitution will take priority, and if there is any restitution order, up to 50% of the DOC spendable account shall be withheld for any restitution. I'm going to impose a fine in this case of $2,500 plus 78% in surcharges. There are some statutory assessments, a $2 victim rights assessment, a $9 victim rights assessment, a $13 penalty assessment, probation surcharge of $20, public defender assessment fee of $25, a time payment fee of $20. All financial obligations shall be reduced to a criminal restitution order upon the defendant's release from custody. You do have the right to you do have the right to appeal from the orders of the court and have a lawyer represent you. If you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed to you. If you can't afford copies of the necessary records and transcripts, they will be provided to you at no cost. If you want to appeal, you have to file your notice of appeal within 20 days of today's date, or you lose the right to seek that relief. You'll have to sign for a copy of your rights, which Mr. Fallick will have for you there. I have to give you the new advisory. As a second and subsequent felony offender, you have the right to apply to have the judgment of conviction set aside and have your civil rights restored. The application to restore your civil rights you can not apply to, this is the wrong one. Strike that. You do have the right to have the judgment of conviction set aside and have your civil rights restored. That includes the right to vote, serve as a juror, hold public office, and firearm rights. The application to restore your civil rights cannot be filed until you have completed your sentence and received an absolute discharge from prison. And the applications can be obtained from the clerk's office at no cost and no filing fee. At this time, defendant is remanded to the custody of the sheriff, who's authorized to deliver the defendant to the custody of the Arizona Department of Corrections, which is authorized to carry out the terms of imprisonment set forth herein. The clerk of the court shall remit a copy of this order together with the pre-sentence report, any medical and mental health records and reports, if any, to the Arizona Department of Corrections. Anything I've forgotten, Leanne? Anything I've forgotten? Anything I've forgotten, Ms. Harris?
No, thank you.
Mr. Falk?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, best of luck to you, sir.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. We'll be at recess.
All right.
Sign right here. It's the same thing as that. Same, I got a copy. Is your post-conviction.
For more local news coverage, live and on demand, watch King 5 Plus. Download free on Roku and Fire TV.